This new airman falls for the girl at first sight. She's new too, but she's known as the Cold Beauty. When Steve tries to flirt, she simply says, "You should go." Her name is Jane, the daughter of a general. Working in the cafeteria is just her way of experiencing life. Her father always warns her not to date any soldiers, because he knows those men, hardened by years of training, don't really know how to treat women, and once deployed, they can disappear for months. So he forbids Jane from dating anyone in the unit. Jane promises she won't, but Steve keeps showing up at mealtimes, finding excuses to talk to her again and again. Jane's cold attitude slowly softens. She even starts secretly watching him. So when Steve asks her out again on Sunday, Jane hesitates for a second and says, maybe. That's all it takes to make Steve jump for joy. Maybe means there's hope. Sunday night, Jane puts on a red dress. She tells her parents she's going to the movies with her friend Julie. Her father glances at his watch and warns, "Be home before 10. Jane nods and leaves. At the theater, Julie immediately kisses her boyfriend. The sight makes Steve and Jane awkward, so they decide to skip the movie and just take a walk. Steve is about to speak, but Jane cuts him off. "I'm not going to kiss you." Steve laughs, saying, "Who said I wanted to kiss you? I just think you're pretty and sweet, and I want to spend time with you." They sit on a park bench and talk. Feeling his sincerity, Jane slowly opens up. She says she wants to go to college, to have a real career, but her parents insist she's just a girl. Steve looks into her eyes and says, "To me, you're not just a girl." That look makes her heart skip a beat. Then she asks softly, "Do you have a girlfriend?" Steve looks surprised and shakes his head. Their eyes lock. The moment feels perfect. Just as Julie suddenly appears, reminding Jane it's already past 10, Jane says goodbye reluctantly and turns to leave, but Steve stops her and finally gathers the courage to give her a soft, gentle kiss. When Jane gets home, her parents are waiting. Her father frowns. "It's almost 11. Jane stammers, "The ice cream was great, really," but her nervous face gives her away. After she leaves, her mother smiles. "Remember our first date? She's just like us." But the father looks tense, worried about losing his little girl. The next day, Jane invites Steve to lunch, pretending he's a college student tutoring her in math, but her father, the general, sees through it right away. After the meal, he orders Steve to wash the dishes, serve the tea, and clean the storeroom. Jane gets upset. She knows her father is making things hard for Steve. Even her mother thinks he's gone too far. But Steve never complains. He knows this is a test, and for Jane, he's willing to do anything. That day, Steve is tutoring Jane when her father suddenly interrupts. He orders Steve to go weed the yard. Seeing Jane's worried face, Steve doesn't hesitate. He walks outside under the blazing sun and starts pulling weeds. The general drinks soda, watching him sweat. Soon, Steve's hand gets cut by thorns. Turns out the gloves the general gave him are torn. Steve asks for another pair, but the general coldly refuses. Finally, after being pricked again, Steve rips the gloves off and confronts him. "Why are you doing this to me?" The general says bluntly, "I simply don't believe you. I don't believe you're a college student tutoring my daughter." Steve is speechless. Later, Steve tells Jane her father probably knows who he really is. He wants to confess he's just a soldier, but Jane stops him because she knows her father will never allow it. Still, the truth doesn't stay hidden for long. One day, while Steve is on guard duty, a car drives up. It's Jane's father. And just like that, the general exposes Steve's identity. At home, he scolds Jane for lying and forbids her from ever seeing Steve again. But Jane is already in love. For the first time, she fights back, shouting at her father. Even when she swears she'll stay with Steve, the stubborn general refuses to listen. He threatens to have Steve transferred, so she'll never see him again. That night, Steve meets Jane and tells her he's being reassigned. He may be gone for a long time, but Steve stays optimistic. Maybe it's a good career move. Jane's face falls. She thinks her father's plan worked. She thinks Steve is breaking up with her. Tears well up in her eyes. But suddenly, Steve asks if Jane will marry him, and she smiles with joy. Still, she says she wants her father's blessing. It means everything to her. Steve nods sincerely, then kisses her deeply. Just then, headlights flash across the field. Jane's father arrives. Seeing Jane's panic, Steve jokes, "Has your dad ever killed one of your boyfriends?" Jane laughs through her nerves, then hurries away. The next day, Steve visits the general to ask for Jane's hand. The general is calmly cleaning his gun. Steve speaks from the heart, but the general doesn't listen. Instead, he drags Steve to the firing range. He shoots first. A single bullet shatters a bottle in the distance. He smirks, then says, "You have 2 chances, hit the bottle, and she's yours." Steve tenses up. He takes aim, but the general keeps distracting him. The first shot misses. The second one too. He lowers the rifle. Defeated. Rules are rules. He keeps his word. He finds Jane and tells her it's over. Jane breaks down, shouting at her father, "He's gone. Are you happy now? You didn't just lose him. You lost me too. I'll never forgive you." The general's heart shatters. He only wanted a better life for his daughter. Did he really make a mistake? That night, he polishes his shoes in frustration, but his wife gently reminds him, "When we got married, our parents didn't approve either. That was 30 years ago. Do you remember the last time you cleaned your shoes? It was the night before our child was born. The shoes were clean, your heart wasn't." The general falls silent, lost in thought. The next day, he drives out to find Steve, holding the same bottle. He says quietly, "You actually hit it yesterday. I don't know why it didn't break. Maybe God left that for me to fix. I gave my word, so now, you can marry my daughter." Steve can barely contain his joy. He's grinning, jumping, almost laughing through tears. Soon, the two hold a beautiful wedding in a small church. The general, now a proud father-in-law, watches from the pew with a smile full of peace. Time flies. 46 years later, Steve and Jane have two daughters, one a doctor, the other a lawyer. Now old and gray, they're ready to retire and travel the world. But suddenly, tragedy strikes. Their car crashes. When the police arrive, Jane is conscious. Her arm is injured, but she's alive. Steve, however, lies unconscious, rushed straight into the emergency room. Both daughters arrive in panic after hearing the news. Moments later, the doctor walks out. He tells Jane that Steve's spine is completely shattered. He may never walk again. Jane's world collapses. The future she dreamed of, gone in an instant. But at least he's still alive. That means there's hope. She prays with her daughters, begging God to save him, but God stays silent. After surgery, Steve is covered in metal frames. Worse, his organs are failing. Even breathing now depends on machines. Jane breaks down in tears at the sight. She asks the doctor if Steve will need a wheelchair forever, then says she'll learn nursing to care for him. But her elder daughter, the doctor, interrupts. She already knows the truth. Her father isn't just paralyzed. He doesn't have long left. Jane refuses to believe it. She can't imagine living without him. Soon, the doctor says Steve has regained consciousness. Jane quickly unwraps her bandaged arm, not wanting him to worry. Steve opens his eyes, his gaze soft, full of tears. Now, only his face can move. The doctor tells Jane that Steve is awake, but it's not recovery, it's the final stage. His breathing depends entirely on the machine. Soon, he'll be gone. He urges Jane to prepare for the end. Jane collapses, begging for another surgery, but her daughter gently says, "Mom, let Dad go peacefully." Jane can't accept it. She can't face life without him. That night, she walks into the hospital room, sits by his bed, and whispers through tears, "If you're ready to leave, please let me say goodbye first. They tell me to let you go, but it feels wrong. Tell me what you want me to do." She looks into his eyes and understands. Steve doesn't want to suffer anymore. He wants to go with dignity. Though her heart breaks, she chooses to honor his wish. She calls the priest and her daughters. Then, with trembling hands, she turns off the ventilator. She holds his hand tight as he takes his final breath. They promise to stay together for life, but he leaves first. Jane kisses him one last time. Their love, though parted by death, still lingers. Maybe their goodbye is only temporary. Someday, somewhere in another world, they'll meet again, because true love never dies.